So, what did we learn this week about Mono Blue Metallurgic Rise? And I have to say, this deck was way better than I imagined. On paper, it looked fine. It looked decent. I mean, I like Rise from the Tides decks. It reminds me of our Brain in the Jar deck, so I thought it would be decent. I'm a big fan of Part the Water Veil and drawing cards and Engulf the Shore, so going into it, I thought this deck will probably be okay. What I didn't expect is we were just going to crush people and go 5-0. We were able to beat aggro decks. We were able to beat slower, more controlling decks, so the performance of this deck was just way better than I thought. We couldn't ask for any more than going 5-0 with Mono Blue Metallurgic Rise. So instead of talking about, oh, I would change this and this is what went wrong, I want to talk about some of the neat things that I realized while playing this deck that doesn't necessarily come across on paper. So, number one, when I saw Scour the Laboratory, I was like, oh, it's so expensive. How's this deck ever going to get Delirium? But as we played the games, it became clear that pieces of the puzzle is not only find two spells, but it often gets Delirium on its own, and even if it doesn't, the second one almost always does. So while it seemed a stretch that we would have Delirium in this deck, we actually got it very often thanks to pieces of the puzzle. I was also very surprised by the synergy of Torrential Gearhulk and Select for Inspection. The ability to bounce and replay for just 1 mana Torrential Gearhulk and get a Scry out of the deal was very good. That would be one of the things I would consider upgrading. Torrential Gearhulk came across just as a all-star when we drew it out of our sideboard. I would consider playing a couple of them in the main deck. Exactly where to fit them, I'm not sure. My first thought is to take the Rise from the Tides out of the main deck and put it in the sideboard. So Rise from the Tides, even though it's in the name of the deck, doesn't come across as that necessary. We won 10 games, the necessary amount to win 5 matches, and I think we Rise from the Tides 1 time, and it was good, but I don't even know if it was 100% necessary in this situation. Like, it was fine and it won us the game, but we might have won the game even without it. I think its value comes from being a hedge against Lost Legacy. This deck would have an incredibly hard time winning if Lost Legacy took all of our Metallurgic Summonings. Then we'd be on purely the Part the Water Veil plan, which is possible, but not very likely. We got no ramp, it's going to be super slow. So that's the value from Rise from the Tides, but I don't know if it's necessary in the main deck because no one plays Lost Legacy in the main deck, and most of the time we just discarded Rise from the Tides, honestly. So I would consider moving the Rise from the Tides to the sideboard and bringing it in to fight Lost Legacy, essentially, as a backup win condition, and putting a Torrential Gearhulk in the main deck, maybe finding room for one more. I think the double scatter to the winds were pretty hit or miss. In some matchups are great, in some matchups are pretty slow. We never really awoken them. It's a little risky in our deck to open up a land to get killed. We really are mana intensive. We want to make our land drop every single turn. The more mana, the better, because we have so much card draw. We have Metallurgic Summonings. So we usually just use it like a counterspell anyway. So I could imagine maybe going down to 1 Scatter to the Winds and bringing a couple Torrential Gearhulks in the main deck. Of course, if there's budget concerns, don't worry about that. I was also shocked by our ability to make Jace good. We play Jace, and for one thing, people just don't respect Jace, so they ignored it in some matchups. And we even had the game where we were able to Jace plus, part the Water Veil, ultimate Jace, and that just won us the game. After you get a Jace emblem where you counter the first spell each turn, it is really hard to lose. So I was impressed by the deck's ability to keep up with aggro, thanks to Grip of the Royal and Engulf the Shore. We cycle through our deck so easily with pieces of the puzzle and anticipate that we're always finding action, finding the pieces we need, and being able to bounce everything and make our opponent replay it was better than I thought. I thought against very fast aggro decks with lots of 1-drops, it might not be good enough, but we beat the red-black aggro deck, which was very aggressive and had reasonable draws, thanks to being able to bounce their stuff. And then once we get Metallurgic Summonings online, that's kind of the challenge of the deck, is we got to stall out and we got to find a window where we can resolve a Metallurgic Summonings without dying. And that's why it's challenging. A lot of times, yeah, if we tap out on turn 5 for Metallurgic Summonings, we have a Summonings, but are we going to be able to untap on turn 6, or are we just going to die in the spot? Select for Inspection actually is a huge deal there, because on turn 6, we can Metallurgic Summonings and select for Inspection something. So a lot of times we're waiting to turn 6, 7, 9, 10 before we play our Metallurgic Summonings, so we can kind of keep our opponent under control and then be able to Summonings plus cast spells to make blockers or bounce our opponent's stuff with Engulf the Shore or tap it down with Grip of the Royal. So overall, the deck was a blast. It was a ton of fun, way more competitive than I thought, very budget friendly, just all around the deck was awesome, and I'm super excited that we got to play it. I definitely would recommend checking it out. Like I said, if you're not worried about budget, the only real upgrade I see is getting Torrential Gearhulks, more Torrential Gearhulks into the deck, potentially Overrise from the Tides and a counterspell. Otherwise, it functioned incredibly well as it was, and I'm super happy with it. So anyway, that's been our Much Abrew About Nothing for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos, and I will talk to you soon.